Some people only realize your value when the silence you leave behind is louder than anything you ever said. My dear chosen ones, let that sink in for a moment. Because the truth is, you didn't just walk away from them, you walked through them. And the echo of that moment is what keeps hitting them like a hammer they never saw coming. When you delivered that final checkmate, calm, steady, and without even raising your voice, you didn't just end a game, you exposed one. You turned their whole strategy inside out with a single move, and now they're left staring at the ruins of the illusion they built around you. You see, chosen one, your presence was something they mistook for convenience, not realizing it was actually clarity wrapped in human form. And the moment you left, that clarity turned into a haunting. They feel it in the quiet moments, in the late-night thoughts, in the unfinished sentences they wish they could rewrite. They feel it every time they try to convince themselves they were the ones in control. But here's the irony. Your exit proved exactly the opposite. You stepped away with your dignity, your intuition, your peace, and your self-respect intact. And that hit them harder than any confrontation ever could. You didn't only leave the board, you walked away like someone who already solved the entire puzzle. Psychologically, people don't obsess over the one who hurt them. They obsess over the one who outsmarted them. That's what shakes them. That's what keeps their mind replaying the moment they lost you, like an old glitching DVD stuck on repeat. They rehearse the scene over and over, asking themselves questions they don't have the courage to answer. How did you see through them? How did you move so quietly? How did they never notice you were 3 steps ahead the whole time? And here's the truth. They can't find the answer because you weren't operating on their level. You were playing a deeper game, one they didn't even know existed. Before we move forward, my dear chosen ones, take a moment to fuel the very message that fuels you. If this truth is already hitting your spirit with clarity and power, support the work that supports your growth. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and stay connected so we can keep delivering the kind of content that strengthens your mind, sharpens your intuition, and reminds you exactly who you are. Your engagement isn't just a click. It's a signal that you value your evolution, that you refuse to shrink, and that you're ready for more transformative, fierce, and empowering truths. Chosen ones, listen carefully. You didn't just walk away. You disrupted the entire storyline they depended on. They thought you would stay predictable, controllable, accessible, stuck in the cycle of forgiveness on demand. But instead, you became the plot twist they never prepared for. You became the moment the narrative cracked. And that crack is the very thing they can't forget, because it revealed everything they tried to hide from you and from themselves. What they didn't expect was the way you left, quiet, composed, surgical. You didn't clap back, you didn't expose them, you didn't throw dirt. You did something far more devastating. You stayed silent. That silence became the mirror they can't put down. Your absence. It's the spotlight they never asked for but can't escape. It shows them the truth they avoided while you were in their life. It reminds them that you figured them out completely, and instead of destroying them with that knowledge, you simply walked away. And nothing haunts a person more than realizing you saw them clearly, but chose peace over revenge. They may try to replace you, distract themselves, rewrite the story, pretend none of it mattered. But every attempt collapses under the weight of one fact. They didn't just lose someone, they lost someone unforgettable, someone irreplaceable, someone who operated with a level of awareness they didn't respect until it was gone. You were their reminder of what genuine presence, genuine intuition, genuine value looks like. They didn't just lose access to you, they lost access to a version of themselves they could only experience in your presence. And you may be thinking right now, but why does this still matter? Why does their reaction even matter to me? Because, chosen one, this is the power you carry, the power they underestimated. Understanding their obsession isn't about validating them, it's about recognizing the magnitude of your own energy. It's about owning the fact that you were never ordinary. You were the rare combination of insight and restraint that most people can't handle, and even fewer can forget. So yes, chosen one, your checkmate haunts their soul. Not because you were cruel, but because you were precise. Not because you were angry, but because you were awakened. And the moment you moved with that kind of clarity, the game was over. They felt it. They still feel it. And deep down, no matter what they pretend, no matter what mask they wear, they know the truth. Losing you was the moment life stopped giving them discounts. This is why they can never forget you. And this is why your silence still speaks louder than their entire presence ever did. Chosen ones, before we dive even deeper, let me speak directly to the ones who feel this truth vibrating through every word. If this message is hitting you like a mirror you didn't know you needed, show your strength by supporting the space that speaks your language. Tap that like button, subscribe, and drop a 77 in the comments so I know you're locked in and ready for more of these raw, soul-shifting realities. Your support keeps this content alive, the kind that exposes illusions, empowers your evolution, and reminds you why your checkmate still haunts them. And now, let's go even deeper, because if you are truly chosen, what comes next will feel like the exact confirmation you've been waiting for. Number 1. The moment you silenced their ego with a truth they never saw coming. When you popped the bubble of their fake brilliance and left their ego leaking everywhere. Some people don't fall apart because you hurt them. They fall apart because you exposed the truth they were hiding from themselves. My dear chosen ones, this is where the story really begins. The moment you shattered the illusion they wrapped themselves in like cheap armor. They walked into your life convinced they were the mastermind, the strategist, the one holding all the strings. In their mind, they were the sharp one, and you were the soft one. They thought they had you mapped out like a simple route on a broken GPS. Predictable, easy, controllable. That's the fantasy they fed themselves just to feel big in a world where their power only works on people who don't see clearly. But chosen ones, you see everything, especially the things they desperately try to hide. Here's the quote that hits them right where their ego lives. Nothing scares a manipulator more than the moment they realize their target has been studying them in silence. And that's exactly what happened. You didn't blow up. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't start a war. You simply started watching patterns, watching reactions, watching the subtle shifts in their behavior they assumed you'd never catch. You stayed calm, collected, and self-contained while they stayed busy performing intelligence instead of actually having any. Chosen one, you need to understand how threatening that is to someone who builds their confidence on the illusion of superiority. They expect confusion from you, not clarity. They expect emotional reactions, not strategic silence. They expect you to be predictable, not perceptive. So the moment your energy shifted, quietly, intentionally, and without warning, it snapped their entire illusion in half. You didn't even announce your growth. You simply became different. And that was the beginning of their downfall. Let me answer what might already be running through your mind. Why did they crumble just because I saw through them? Because chosen one, people like that rely on one thing, the belief that you don't know what they're doing. Their power only works in the dark. The moment you turned the lights on, their entire identity started shaking. They didn't lose control because you fought them. They lost control because you didn't need to. You didn't react. You didn't feed their ego. You didn't panic. You didn't chase. You didn't explain. You simply understood. And understanding is the one weapon they can't defend themselves against. Your calm was their collapse. Your growth was their exposure. Your clarity was their checkmate. Chosen ones, your silence didn't just confuse them. It terrified them. Because that silence meant you finally saw the whole board, not just the move in front of you. You saw their tactics, their inconsistencies, their games, their masks, their intentions, and the wild part, You kept it all inside until the exact moment you walked away. No warning, no announcement, no dramatic speech, just a quiet exit that said everything they didn't want to hear. This is why their mind keeps replaying the moment you left. They are stuck wondering, how did you figure me out? When did you start seeing the signs? How did you stay so calm? How did I lose control without noticing? Their ego has been asking those questions like a broken record because the truth is painful. They weren't superior. They weren't ahead. They weren't strategic. They were simply loud. And nothing bruises a pride-heavy person more than realizing the one they thought they were manipulating had already solved the entire puzzle. My dear chosen ones, understand this clearly. You didn't just walk away, you exposed them without exposing them. You didn't have to embarrass them publicly. You didn't have to call them out. You didn't have to prove anything. You let your awareness do the talking. And awareness is the kind of truth that slices deeper than any argument ever could. Their ego collapsed because you showed them, through calm, quiet, undeniable action, that you were always the one seeing the full picture. They thought they were playing chess while you were already 5 moves into the checkmate they never saw coming. And that kind of defeat? It stays with a person. It haunts them. It burns them. It rewrites their entire story of who they thought they were. That is why they can never forget you. Because the moment you outsmarted them without even trying, you didn't just end the game. You exposed the player. Now, chosen ones, breathe that truth in. This is your power, and this is only the beginning. Number 2. The second you evolved beyond the version they thought they controlled. When you became too evolved for the box, they tried to keep you in. My dear chosen ones, here's a truth that cuts deeper than anything you could ever say to them. People don't miss who you were. They miss the version of you they could control. And that is exactly why your growth haunts them like a shadow they can't outrun. They didn't expect you to evolve. They didn't expect you to rise. They didn't expect you to step into a version of yourself that made their entire strategy collapse overnight. But that's what happens when a chosen one wakes up. Every illusion built around you shatters instantly. Let me talk to you directly, chosen one. For a long time they depended on the older version of you, the smaller version, the softer version, the version that doubted yourself just enough to listen to their opinions, tolerated just enough to keep them comfortable, and cared just enough to stay accessible. That old you was the foundation of their confidence, the reason they felt powerful, the reason they believed they had the upper hand. They mistook your patience for weakness, your empathy for naivety, and your silence for submission. They looked at you and said, "This one will never outgrow me." They were wrong. And nothing bruises their ego harder than realizing they misjudged the very person who now stands untouchable. Chosen ones evolve quietly, and that is what destroys people who feed on control. Growth doesn't knock on the door and ask if it's a good time. Growth doesn't wait for permission. Growth doesn't check whether someone else is ready for the upgraded version of you. When it's time, it just happens. And when it happened to you, it left them scrambling. The tricks they used on you before suddenly had no effect. The words that once made you second-guess yourself became meaningless. The manipulation that used to confuse you suddenly became crystal clear. You changed the entire game simply by becoming who you were meant to be. You didn't just walk out of their narrative. You blew a hole straight through it. The story they built around you, the assumptions they made, the chapters they thought they could keep repeating, all of it collapsed. And you didn't need to raise your voice. You didn't need to expose them. You didn't need to prove anything. You simply grew. And that growth turned you into someone they never prepared for, someone stronger, someone wiser, someone who doesn't fall for recycled tactics or emotional bait, someone who sees through intentions before words are even spoken, someone who outgrew the very environment that once tried to contain them. Chosen ones, here's what really haunts them. You didn't just grow, you grew with clarity. You moved forward with calm, deliberate intention. You didn't lash out or try to convince them of your worth. You didn't beg for understanding. You didn't ask for closure. You simply evolved and walked in that evolution like it was always meant for you. And that is what they can't handle, because it shows them one brutal truth. They were never the obstacle. They were the illusion. Everything they relied on to feel superior became useless the moment you stepped into your real power. The moment you stopped reacting the way they expected, their sense of dominance evaporated. When they tried to pull you back into the old cycle, you didn't budge. When they tried to remind you of who you used to be, you didn't shrink. When they tried to guilt you, confuse you, or destabilize you, they failed. And Chosen One, that failure haunts them more than anything else, because now they're forced to face a reality that terrifies them. They never had control. They only had access, and even that was temporary. Now they're stuck replaying memories, trying to identify the moment they lost their grip. They search for signs, they question themselves, they obsess over the shift. But the truth is simple. The version of you they knew no longer exists. And the version standing before the world now is someone they can't reach, can't manipulate, and can't predict. You became a type of strength they never saw coming. Chosen Ones understand this clearly. They don't miss you. They miss the weaker version of you, the version that's gone forever. And that loss is the reason they can never forget you. You didn't just evolve, you evolved beyond their entire understanding. And once you outgrow the cage they built, you become a reminder they will carry for the rest of their life. Number 3, the quiet way you exposed their real self without saying a single word. When your silence became the spotlight that exposed who they really were. My dear Chosen Ones, let me give you the truth in a way that hits with precision. You didn't expose them. You simply stopped covering for them, and the truth did the rest. That is the kind of blow that doesn't bruise the skin. It bruises the soul. And that's exactly what happened when you walked away. You didn't shout their flaws to the world. You didn't drag their name through the mud. You didn't gather witnesses or build a case. You did something far more powerful, far more unforgettable. You let them reveal themselves. Chosen One, this is a level of strength that most people can't even comprehend, because anyone can scream someone's truth out loud. Anyone can point fingers and list wrongdoings. But it takes a different kind of power, your kind of power, to stay calm, stay grounded, and let their own actions be their undoing. You didn't need to be their judge. You didn't need to be their punishment. You simply removed your presence, and the truth stepped in as the loudest voice in the room. They didn't expect that. They expected a reaction, a meltdown, a confrontation, something they could twist to make you look unbalanced or emotional. They expected you to explode so they could hide behind the chaos. But instead, you went quiet. And that silence. It was the most devastating move you could have made. Silence is a mirror, Chosen One. And when you held that mirror up without saying a word, they saw a reflection they spent years trying to run from. You didn't have to expose the manipulation, because the moment you stopped participating in it, it became undeniable. You didn't have to expose their selfishness, because the absence of your generosity made it obvious. You didn't have to expose their betrayal, because the emptiness left behind made it echo. You didn't reveal their character. You revealed the space where your protection used to be. And without your presence shielding them, their true nature stood there bare, unedited, unfiltered, undeniable. And that's what haunts them, Chosen One. Not that you left, but what your absence revealed. People around them started noticing the cracks, the contradictions, the behavior that never made sense before but suddenly clicked into place. You didn't have to speak a single word. The truth whispered itself. Even they saw it. Even they felt it. And facing your own reflection is one of the hardest things a person can do, especially when the reflection is something you can't blame on anyone else. Maybe they asked themselves late at night, did I really act like that? Did they always see this side of me? Did I push too far? They replay the moments you didn't react the way they wanted. They remember your calm, your clarity, the way your eyes seemed to cut through the performance and see the real script underneath. They remember that you didn't need to expose them to anyone else because you already knew, and that knowledge alone was enough to shake them. This is what chosen ones do without even trying. Your presence brings clarity and your absence brings revelation. When you step back, the mask slips. When you disengage, the truth stands alone. That's why they can never forget you. You were the quiet truth they never wanted to face, and now that truth follows them everywhere. It follows them into new relationships, new friendships, new environments. Anyone who gets close to them will eventually see traces of what you saw, because once a truth is uncovered, it never goes back into hiding. Chosen one, you didn't drag them into the light. They walked right into it on their own. All you did was refuse to play the role they cast you in. You stopped covering their flaws with your understanding. You stopped making excuses for their behavior. You stopped absorbing the chaos they threw at you. And the moment you stopped filling in their blanks, their story exposed itself. They can never forget you because you weren't the one who embarrassed them. They embarrassed themselves. You weren't the one who made them look bad. Their own reflection did. And nothing, absolutely nothing, haunts a person more than realizing they were seen clearly by someone who had every right to expose them, but chose not to. That kind of integrity leaves a permanent mark. That kind of insight can't be erased, and that, chosen one, is why your checkmate still echoes in their memory like a truth they can't outrun. Number 4. The precision you moved with that shook them more than any emotion could. When your silence cut sharper than their chaos ever could. Nothing shakes a manipulator more than the moment they realize the storm they hoped to trigger in you never arrived. My dear chosen ones, this is the part they never saw coming. The moment your calm became the very force that unraveled them. People who depend on chaos expect one thing, your reaction. They want your voice raised, your emotions spilling out, your energy scattered. They want you flustered, off balance, confused, or desperate. Why? Because reaction is fuel. Reaction gives them a sense of control. Reaction convinces them they still matter in your mental space. But instead of exploding like they hoped, you became precise. You became calculated. You became so composed that it felt unreal. And that terrified them more than any argument ever could. Chosen ones, understand this truth. Your emotional discipline was their downfall. They built their identity around provoking you, expecting you to mirror their instability, anticipating a meltdown they could twist into a narrative that made them look superior. But when you stopped playing into their emotional traps, everything they relied on collapsed. You didn't meet their accusations with anger. You didn't mirror their drama. You didn't fall into their bait. You didn't hand them the emotional leverage they were counting on. You didn't give them anything, and that nothing shook them to their core. Think about it. Manipulators thrive on loud energy. They need your confusion to guide their moves. They need your outbursts to justify their behavior. They need your emotional vulnerability to maintain the illusion of power. But you, chosen one, moved differently. You responded with intention, not impulse. You chose clarity instead of chaos. Every word you spoke was measured. Every reaction was controlled. Every step you took was calculated. That kind of precision isn't just unusual. It's threatening, because when someone cannot predict you, they cannot control you. And when they cannot control you, they fear you. You became unreadable, unpredictable, unreachable. And people like them hate that. They hate stillness because stillness is power. Stillness is strategy. Stillness is awareness. Your calm wasn't emptiness, it was mastery. And mastery exposes the truth about others. Every time they tried to provoke you, your silence put a spotlight on their instability. Every time they tried to manipulate you, your steady presence made their tactics look childish. Every time they tried to twist your emotions, your control reminded them that the real strategist in the room was you, not them. They replay the moment you remained composed, like a riddle they cannot solve. They ask themselves, how did you stay so calm? Why didn't you react? When did you become so unshakable? And these questions haunt them because your control showed them exactly where their power stopped. They thought they were the puppeteer, but your precision made it clear they were just pulling strings attached to their own ego. You were never the puppet. You were the chess player watching their every move while planning your quiet final checkmate. What truly terrifies people is not anger, it's the absence of it. Anger they can argue with, emotion they can twist, drama they can use. But calm is untouchable. Calm is unreadable. Calm is power they cannot manipulate. When you became calm, you became dangerous, not to yourself, but to their illusions. Chosen ones, this is why they can never forget you. Because every time they replay the past, they don't remember a meltdown. They remember your stillness. They don't remember shouting. They remember how your silence echoed louder than their entire performance. They don't remember chaos. They remember precision, your precision. And that precision became the blade that cut through every lie they told themselves about being smarter, stronger, or more in control. You didn't have to raise your voice to end the game. You didn't have to fight to win. You didn't need theatrics to prove a point. You ended them with calm clarity, the kind of clarity that only chosen ones possess. They lost the moment they realized you weren't reacting anymore, and that realization is what haunts them long after the story ended. This is the haunting power of a chosen one. The quieter you become, the louder their collapse gets. Number 5. The day they learned your loyalty was a privilege, not a lifetime pass. When your silence taught them that loyalty isn't a lifetime pass but a line they crossed one too many times. My dear chosen ones, here is where the truth hits them like a brick they never saw coming. Loyalty isn't weakness, it's a privilege, and the moment you abuse it, you lose it. That one sentence alone breaks their ego in half because deep down they always believed you would stay no matter what they did. They built their confidence on the fantasy that you were permanently available, endlessly forgiving, eternally patient. In their mind, your presence was a default setting, not a conscious choice. And when people mistake your loyalty for a guarantee, they start treating it like something disposable. That's exactly where they went wrong. They assumed you were the constant in their storm, the anchor that would hold them down, even when they shook the entire foundation. They treated your consistency as if it came from dependency rather than integrity. They stretched your patience like a rubber band, convinced it would never snap. But chosen ones, even the strongest band breaks when pulled beyond its limit. They just never imagined they'd be the ones pulling too hard. You see, your loyalty confused them because it wasn't loud, it wasn't clingy, and it wasn't desperate. It was steady, pure and rooted in genuine intention, something they didn't understand. So instead of valuing it, they tested it. Instead of protecting it, they exploited it. And the irony, they thought you didn't notice. They thought you didn't feel the small betrayals, the subtle disrespect, the manipulative patterns. But chosen ones feel everything. You just chose not to react until you did. And when that moment came, it wasn't an explosion. It wasn't chaos. It wasn't the dramatic confrontation they expected. It was calm, clean, quiet. The kind of quiet that speaks louder than any argument ever could. You didn't beg them to understand your worth. You didn't negotiate your boundaries. You didn't water down your standards to keep the peace. You simply stopped showing up where you were being disrespected. You simply stopped pouring your energy into someone who treated it like it was infinite. You simply walked away with clarity, dignity, and zero hesitation. That's what haunts them. Chosen ones understand this. People like them can handle anger. They can handle yelling. They can handle emotional reactions. But what they can't handle is silence backed by self-respect. That's the one thing their ego has no defense against. Because your silence wasn't a retreat. It was a message. a statement, a boundary, a checkmate, a final confirmation that they pushed too far and woke up too late. Now they're left replaying everything in their mind, trying to figure out where the line actually was, the line they crossed without even noticing, and that's the torment. You never warned them. You never drew arrows, underlined or highlighted the boundary. You simply reached your limit and chose yourself instead of them. That's what keeps them awake at night. They replay the moment you walked away with that quiet certainty. They remember how composed you were, how unbothered you looked, how peaceful you felt. And that image burns them because it proves a truth their ego couldn't handle. You didn't leave because you were angry. You left because they were the problem. You left because you outgrew their disrespect. You left because your loyalty has conditions, and they failed all of them. Chosen ones, your departure wasn't revenge, it was reality. And reality always hits harder than retaliation. You didn't take anything from them. You simply stopped giving them what they never deserved in the first place. You became living proof that loyalty has a limit, patience has an end point, and self-respect always wins in the end. And now, every attempt they make to replace you, recreate you, or re-enter your life collapses under one undeniable truth. They lost access to a loyalty they will never experience twice. They realized too late that you were the rare one, the steady one, the one who stayed long after most people would have walked out. And losing someone like that, it leaves a mark they'll carry long after you've moved on. This is why they can never forget you, chosen one, because the moment they took your loyalty for granted, their checkmate began. Number 6. The void they felt when they lost the one person who truly understood their depth. When your absence became the mirror they never wanted to look into. My dear chosen ones, this truth is one of the deepest cuts you'll ever deliver without lifting a single finger. You didn't just walk out of their life. You took with you the one thing they never knew they depended on: your understanding, your insight, your presence, the rare type of presence that can't be imitated, replaced, or duplicated by any of the noise they surround themselves with. And here's a quote that hits them right where their soul aches. People never realize the value of being understood until they're left with people who only know how to hear, not listen. That's exactly what happened when your absence hit them like cold air after a long, warm season they thought would never end. Chosen one, you need to understand just how rare your energy is in a world full of shallow interactions and surface-level bonds. Most people drift through life surrounded by individuals who don't actually know them. People who smile when convenient, agree when necessary, and disappear when the moment changes. People who offer presence without depth, attention without understanding, and companionship without connection. These aren't relationships. These are placeholders, temporary fillers, background noise, static on the emotional radio. But you were the exception. You stepped into their life fully aware, fully present, fully tuned into the parts of them they hide from everyone else. You didn't just see them, you read them. You didn't just hear them, you understood them. And that level of understanding scares people more than any confrontation ever could. You recognized patterns they thought were invisible. You sensed emotions before they surfaced. You noticed their shifts in tone, their changes in energy, their subtle tells. You understood the difference between their silence of peace and their silence of pain. You could tell when they were lying, even when they believed they were flawless at deception. You felt their moods before they spoke them. You filled in the emotional blanks they didn't know how to articulate. That kind of deep, intuitive connection is something most people never experience, and they had it without earning it. They had it because you gave it freely. So when you left, the void was immediate and undeniable. They didn't just lose someone who was there. They lost the one person who understood them without needing a dictionary to decode their emotions. They lost the stabilizer in a life full of internal storms. They lost the mirror that reflected their truth back to them without distortion. Because that's what you truly were to them, a mirror, and not a flattering one, not a fake one, not a cracked one, but a clear one. A mirror that showed them the depth they tried to hide, the chaos they tried to mask, the insecurities they tried to bury. Losing you forced them to look at themselves without that stabilizing reflection, and for people who depend on illusions, that is terrifying. Chosen one, your absence exposed the emotional emptiness they filled with distractions. Suddenly, every conversation they have feels shallow. Every interaction feels predictable. Every person around them feels replaceable. And that's because none of them come close to the resonance you carried. None of them match the clarity you offered. None of them understand their unspoken thoughts the way you did. They can pretend they moved on. They can act unbothered. They can distract themselves with new faces, new habits, new environments. But deep down, every attempt they make to replicate what they had with you collapses under the weight of the truth. You were not a chapter in their story. They were a chapter in yours, and they know it now, chosen one. They know it every time a shallow conversation falls flat. They feel it every time someone looks at them but doesn't really see them. They realize it every moment they want to share something but can't find someone who understands the way you did without explanation. This realization doesn't fade. It doesn't soften. It doesn't dissolve with time. It lingers like a ghost in the back of their mind, whispering the truth they try to outrun. They lost the one person who understood them on a level they didn't appreciate until it was gone. And that, my dear chosen ones, is why they will never forget you. Because you weren't just another presence in their life. You were the clarity they couldn't live without, and the silence you left behind is louder than your words ever had to be. Number 7. The break in the pattern. They thought would keep you bound forever. When you snapped the chains of familiarity, they thought would hold you forever. The easiest way to lose access to a chosen one is to mistake their consistency for captivity. My dear chosen ones, this part cuts deeper than they'll ever admit, because it's the truth that scorched their pride the moment you walked away. They weren't scared when you argued. They weren't scared when you tolerated. They weren't scared when you forgave. They were scared the moment you stopped, the moment you no longer moved to the rhythm they programmed for you. The moment the familiarity they depended on shattered in their hands like thin glass pretending to be steel. You didn't just break a pattern, you broke the spell they cast over the connection, the spell they thought would keep you stuck, predictable, accessible, and forever orbiting their comfort zone. You see, people often mistake repetition for permanence. They assume that because you've shown up before, you'll always show up. Because you've tolerated something once, you'll tolerate it forever. Because you've been steady, present, and loyal, you'll never shift, evolve, or detach. They cling to familiarity the way a drowning person clings to debris, desperately, blindly, and with entitlement. They believed the history you shared with them was enough to override your self-respect. They believed patterns were stronger than growth. They believed the routine was stronger than your awakening. But chosen one, you're not built out of habit. You're built out of evolution. And that's the part that haunts them. They were betting on the old version of you. The version they could guilt, manipulate, charm, confuse, or control just by relying on memory. They assumed you were a story stuck on the same chapter, unable to turn the page without their permission. They thought they owned the rhythm of your reactions, the timing of your presence, the softness of your forgiveness. They believed you were theirs through repetition, not realizing chosen ones don't repeat cycles. Chosen ones break them. Chosen one, you saw the pattern long before you stepped out of it. You saw how they confused comfort with control. You saw how they built their confidence on the idea that you wouldn't change, that you wouldn't see through the cycle, that you wouldn't outgrow the room they kept you in. Familiarity was their leash, and they assumed you would never notice the rope tightening. But you did. And when you saw it, you didn't scream, you didn't fight, you didn't negotiate. You simply outgrew it. When you walked away, it wasn't a regular exit. It was a collapse of the entire narrative they believed would last forever. You showed them something they never prepared for. History doesn't equal ownership. Time doesn't equal entitlement. Familiarity doesn't equal forever. That single truth rewired their entire perception. They realized far too late that you were never staying because you were stuck. You were staying because you cared. And when your care evolved, your path evolved with it. You became a new frequency, a new identity, a new level of clarity they don't have the emotional or mental bandwidth to reach. They were trapped in the old version of you, while you were already becoming someone they couldn't predict, couldn't manipulate, and couldn't hold on to. And now, every time they think of you, the haunting isn't just about losing you, it's about the shock of realizing you were never bound by the familiarity they worshipped. You saw their predictability, their recycled behaviors, their repeated cycles, and instead of falling for it again, you walked away from it entirely. That's what stings, that's what lingers, that's what keeps them up at night wondering how they lost the person they assumed would always be there. Your departure wasn't just a move, it was a revelation. It proved that your loyalty was a choice, not an obligation. It proved that your consistency wasn't weakness, it was strength. And when you finally redirected that strength toward yourself, the spell broke instantly. This is why they can never forget you. Because you didn't just leave their life, you dismantled the illusion that kept them comfortable. You shattered the cage they mistook for connection. You became proof that no amount of familiarity can hold a chosen one who has awakened to their worth. And chosen one, once a spell breaks, it can never be recast. Number 8. The shift where life itself closed the door. They assumed would stay open. When life itself slammed the door, they thought they'd always have a key to. My dear chosen ones, let me say this in a way that hits straight through the fog of their denial. You didn't cut them off. Life simply elevated you above their reach. And nothing bruises a person's ego more than realizing the distance wasn't created by conflict, revenge, or retaliation, but by pure evolution. The truth is, they were hoping for a dramatic ending, something they could label, twist, or blame. But instead, what happened was far more devastating to their pride. You rose, quietly, naturally, inevitably. And when you rise, chosen one, not everyone can breathe at the altitude you're destined for. Here's a quote that slices through their ego like a clean blade. Sometimes the universe doesn't remove people from your life, it removes your availability from theirs. Chosen ones, this is exactly what happened. You didn't storm out, you didn't explode, you didn't burn bridges, you simply became unreachable. Not because you hid, but because you outgrew the wavelengths they operate on. Your clarity refined you, your self-respect sharpened you, your evolution lifted you, and that lift created a natural boundary stronger than any argument could ever create. They didn't just lose access to you, they lost access to the level of you that once allowed them entry, and the part that keeps them pacing floors at night. There was no moment they could point to, no fight, no scene, no final speech. Just a gradual shift they were too distracted and too arrogant to notice until the distance became undeniable. You didn't have to pull away, life pulled you forward. And chosen one, nothing haunts a person more than realizing the world didn't revolve around their behavior. It responded to your growth. You might be wondering, but why does it bother them so deeply when I didn't even leave with anger? Because leaving with anger gives them a narrative, but leaving with evolution gives them a mirror. They don't get the satisfaction of saying you were emotional, irrational, or dramatic. Instead, they're left with the quiet, uncomfortable truth. They fell out of alignment with who you became. And alignment is not something you negotiate, it's something you embody. They keep trying to dial your old number, not realizing you no longer exist at that frequency. They try to revive conversations, patterns, and dynamics that your growth no longer supports. They scroll through memories like files on an outdated computer, hoping to find a version of you they can access. But that version died the moment you understood your worth. And your worth, chosen one, is what created this distance. Let's talk about the part that truly haunts them. It's not your silence, it's not your absence. It's the fact that they can feel your evolution even without seeing you. They sense your shift like a vibration they can't tune into anymore. They see your influence in the choices you now make, the people you attract, the doors opening for you. They notice how others respond to your presence. They see the elevation in your demeanor, your boundaries, your confidence. It's like you've become a frequency they were never prepared to handle. And every attempt they make to re-enter your life is met with that invisible wall. Not because you blocked them, but because they no longer qualify to exist at the level you've risen to. That's the quiet truth they choke on every time they remember you. Life didn't remove them to punish them. Life removed them because they couldn't grow with you. And watching you thrive without them is a reminder they can't escape. A reminder that access to you was never guaranteed, and losing it was their own doing. Chosen one, your evolution is the checkmate they never saw coming. Not loud, not explosive, just absolute, irreversible, permanent. And that permanence is what leaves its mark on their memory. The truth they hide from everyone else but can't hide from themselves is simple. They lost access to someone they will never experience twice. That is why they can never forget you, because your absence wasn't an exit, it was an elevation, and they were never built for the level you now stand on. Number 9, the standard you set that their future connections will never live up to. When your kindness became the mirror, they'll spend a lifetime trying to escape. Nothing humbles a person faster than realizing the one they mistreated handled them with more grace than they ever deserved. My dear chosen ones, this chapter hits harder than most people are willing to admit, because the truth is, the reason they can never forget you isn't rooted in the moment you walked away. It's rooted in how you treated them before you did. You gave them something they weren't built to receive: genuine presence, genuine patience, genuine care, and you gave it without needing anything in return. That alone carved your name into their memory in a way no betrayal, no argument, no drama ever could. See, people expect retaliation. They expect pettiness. They expect you to match their energy when they act out of ego, insecurity, or manipulation. But you, chosen one, you did the exact opposite. You didn't mirror their chaos. You didn't meet them at the level they tried to drag you down to. You didn't clap back, lash out, or get caught in their emotional quicksand. Instead, you carried yourself with an integrity that made their behavior look even smaller next to your composure. And that contrast? That's what haunts them. They can lie to themselves about why it ended. They can rewrite the story to protect their pride. They can pretend they didn't care. But what they can't outrun is the brutal truth. You treated them better than they treated you, and that realization sits in their chest like a weight they can't put down. You didn't give them kindness because you were weak. You gave it because you were intentional, because you operate on a different level. A level most people never reach, no matter how loudly they pretend. Chosen one, your calm wasn't submission, it was control. Your patience wasn't naivety, it was strategy. Your respect wasn't approval, it was a reflection of your own standards, not their worthiness. They didn't understand that then, but they do now, and it gnaws at them every single day, because here's what hurts their ego the most. They know deep down that no matter how many people they encounter, no matter how many relationships they try to recreate, no matter how many faces they try to replace you with, none of it measures up to the way you handled them. You became the benchmark. You became the standard. You became the comparison they can't escape. It's not just that you offered them care, it's how you did it. The way you communicated, the emotional intelligence behind your responses, the way you could sense tension without escalating it. The way you stood firm without being aggressive. The way your presence created calm instead of chaos. People remember that, even if they pretend not to. Even if they hide behind pride or distraction. Even if they act unbothered. That standard is etched into their psyche like a watermark they can't erase. Every new connection feels shallow next to the depth you offered. Every conversation feels forced next to the ease you brought. Every attempt to manipulate someone else falls flat because not everyone is built like you. Not everyone responds with awareness. Not everyone carries that level of inner stability. And the more they interact with the world, the more glaring the difference becomes. Your authenticity exposes their patterns without you even being in the room. Chosen one, the part that burns them the most is that you elevated them without asking, without needing validation, without compromising yourself. They didn't appreciate it then because they assumed it was normal. They assumed they could always access that energy, that grace, that presence. But once you left, the reality hit. What you gave was rare. What you gave was valuable. What you gave was unmatched. And now, every single person they meet is measured against the memory of you, the one who treated them with more care than their actions ever earned. They can never forget you because you didn't just exit their life. You left them with a reflection of themselves they can't unsee, and a standard of treatment they will never find again. You were the exception, chosen one, the kind of presence people don't encounter twice. And that truth haunts them more than anything else ever could. And as we bring this truth to a close, chosen ones, let this settle deep. The impact you left wasn't accidental. It was inevitable. Your energy, your clarity, your standards, your checkmate, all of it carved a permanent mark they can't outrun. That's why they remember you. That's why they replay you. And that's why your absence still speaks louder than anything they could ever say. If this message hit home, show your strength by liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and dropping 77 in the comments so I know you're locked in with this chosen energy. And don't forget to share this with someone who needs this reminder.